individuals that lived here. Among their slave population, there were certainly skilled brick makers and certainly they provided the labor as well. So when we look at these bricks, occasionally we'll run across fingerprints. You know, we're reminded that those are almost certainly the handprints of the fingerprints of the enslaved brick makers. This was a hot room to be in. So,
What do you think would be a typical meal back in that day?
but of course, they had it was a high protein meal, so there was lots of pork,
The
beef.
caveman diet, right?
It really was. There was because they were expending so much energy in working that their diets required a lot of protein to sustain that level. Americans at that time weren't drinking coffee, they were drinking tea.
That's
No,
right.
I'd be right, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they were drinking.
Slow school.
And coffee was just something that, you didn't.
It's interesting shift in the cultural pattern.
Yeah.
It's interesting shift.
Yeah, and I guess really coffee was something that was enjoyed by the very well-to-do, but I guess as coffee became, ultimately cheaper to acquire,
No.
it
It's
was
interesting.
again found many of the skilled slaves weaving cloth
Mhm.
that would not only that which would be consumed by the family, but more so it was things that could be marketed and traded for outside the immediate region. Tool house, corn crib, which would have been one of many corn cribs. There were several corn cribs to store the corn that was harvested in the fall.
And that is this building over here on the left that I'm looking at, okay?
Smokehouse, which is the building where the meats, having been processed and then salted, were then packed in barrels, stacked, or hung on the rafters.
Which one is that in the middle with the skins or pelts?
Exactly.
And what sorts of meats would they any game that they
Not so
shot?
much game would have been, game would have been eaten at the time of its, once they killed it, then they would eat it. But hog meat and things like beef had to be processed, usually in the fall after a season of fattening the livestock up on corn to really bulk them up in terms of weight. Then they were slaughtered, and within 3 days the meat had to be processed, salted, and ready to be packed away to cure. So that was a period of heavy labor when the slaves and others on the farm would have been involved in working to do that. And all of that meat was then hung either in the rafters of the kitchen, primarily in the smokehouse, but you could have some overflow storage in the rafters of the kitchen.
Where would they keep? You mentioned that they pickled a lot of things and where would they keep? Did they have a cellar?
There wasn't a cellar. Now always possible that they had some additional building that was used for keeping. That today we call those canning houses, or it used to be. That's something that's vanished.
But one of these buildings is not a canning.
No.
It's a beautiful property. Would you say this is kind of rolling hills? Is that what?
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Surrounded by the fairly steep mountains. We're up nearly to the head.
Where would the family go and the slaves as well for recreation, like to fish or to swim?
The creek.
There's a creek behind here?
Vance Creek flows as far as the field at the base of Vance Knob.
Right.
So that would have been where they fished, and they could have dammed the creek up, go swimming, and I'm sure the kids did that, both the enslaved children as well as the Vance children.
It would have been a wonderful thing to do, right?
A mill, Vance's grist mill, stood up here in the bend of the creek, just sort of over the visitor center where the creek comes up closer to the road. The headwaters of this creek, you see the higher mountains up there. That's part of the craggy chain of mountains.
Is that the Blue Ridge Parkway up there?
No, you can't really see the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Because there's a Craggy Gardens and Craggy something spot.
Eventually, we can't see Craggy Gardens. These are part of the trail of mountains that will gain elevation as it continues north, ending up at Craggy.
And how far are we from Bernardsville, where they have? Oh God, is that a bear? No, that's a dog.
Yeah.
It looked like a bear from behind. Is that funny?
Barnardville is just across the. You see that little? That's Raven's Knob. There, the little rounded. You go around and over that. There's a road. This road eventually will dead end, and then you take the left fork, which is called Manny Branch Road, and that will wind up and over
Okay.
through the gap and down into
Interesting.
Barnersville.
The reason I asked that, I know they have a zip lining thing.
Yeah.
Navitat zip lining. This is beautiful up here.
Yeah.